Hello, I'm James Macquarie, one of the founders at GLAD. This is our Breaking Down Climate Pollution podcast, in which we ask an AI to generate a deep dive conversation based on climate science or a policy document we'd like to learn more about. In this episode, we asked the AI to take a deep dive into a report from the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative, exploring whether using a technique called ocean alkalinity enhancement might speed up the process of removing carbon dioxide from our atmosphere. Let's dive in.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive into something you might not have heard of. Ocean alkalinity enhancement.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting one.
It really is. So we've got a stack of research briefs and scientific proposals to try and unpack this and really figure out what it's all about.
Yeah.
And even a glimpse into the companies trying to make this a reality.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, it's really cutting edge stuff.
It is.
Right.
What's remarkable is that this idea, it's not science fiction.
Right.
This is based on natural processes that already occur in our oceans.
Okay.
We're just talking about amplifying them to a much larger scale.
So essentially we're boosting the ocean's ability to neutralize acid and absorb more CO2 from the atmosphere.
Exactly. The ocean is already a massive carbon sink.
Right.
It holds 50 times more carbon than the atmosphere, which is,
Wow.
yeah, it's a staggering number.
I knew it was vast, but that's...
When you think about it,
Yeah.
50 times.
That really drives home the point that this could be really impactful.
It really does.
How does it actually work?
So picture this.
Okay.
Rainwater, slightly acidic from CO2 in the air,
Right.
falls to the earth and reacts with rocks, slowly breaking them down over millions of years.
Okay.
Kind of like nature's slow release antacid, right?
Okay.
So this process, called weathering, releases ions into rivers and eventually into the ocean.
Right.
And these ions react with CO2, effectively locking it away.
So alkalinity enhancement is us speeding that up, like giving the earth a helping hand.
Precisely. We're accelerating that natural weathering process. And to get a little bit more technical, it converts CO2 into more stable forms,
Okay.
like bicarbonate and carbonate,
Right.
which can remain locked away for centuries.
And we're talking about some serious chemical reactions here.
We are.
What are the ways scientists are looking to actually enhance ocean alkalinity?
Right.
Is it just as simple as like dumping a bunch of antacids in the sea?
It's a bit more complicated than that, unfortunately.
Okay.
There are two primary methods being explored.
Okay.
One is adding certain minerals to the ocean,
Okay.
and the other is using something called electrochemical techniques.
Okay. So two very different approaches.
Yeah,
So let's start with the first one. What kind of minerals are we talking?
right,
And how do we even begin to add them to the ocean on a scale that would make a difference?
right.
Like how much are we talking? Adding minerals to the ocean on a massive scale? I mean, that sounds like a logistical challenge and a half.
Yeah, it's...
Where do these minerals even come from?
So some of the minerals being considered are limestone, which is primarily calcium carbonate,
Okay.
olivine, which is a greenish mineral.
Yeah.
You might even find it in some jewelry.
Really?
And even construction waste is on the table.
Wow. So you're telling me my friend with the green gemstone ring could be sporting a tiny piece of the solution to climate change?
That's right. Yeah, they could be right on the cutting edge of climate fashion.
That's pretty cool. I like it.
So the idea is to mimic and expedite natural weathering.
Okay.
So we're sort of giving it a helping hand.
So we were talking about scale, though. How much of this stuff are we talking about adding to the ocean?
We're talking gigatons of material to meaningfully impact global CO2 levels.
Okay, so just to put that into perspective for me, how much is a gigaton?
A gigaton is 1 billion tons.
That's a lot of tons.
It's a lot of material, yeah.
Yeah, and distributing that much material, even strategically, I imagine, presents some significant challenges.
It does. It does. Sourcing these minerals sustainably is a big one.
Right.
I need to make sure that we're not creating new environmental problems while trying to solve another.
Right. We don't want to solve one problem and then create another.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then there's the carbon footprint of mining, processing, and transporting these massive quantities of minerals.
Right.
We don't want to offset the intended carbon removal with emissions from the process itself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there are a lot of, it's kind of like you're taking a step back to take 2 steps forward.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
But if you don't take that step back, it's 2 steps back.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's a tricky thing.
And I imagine there's a whole ecological impact assessment that needs to be done before we start scattering minerals across the ocean.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we need to carefully consider the potential impacts on marine ecosystems at every stage of the process, from mining to transporting to the actual distribution in the ocean.
Yeah.
It's crucial to make sure we're not disrupting, delicate food webs or harming marine life in any way.
So it seems like this mineral approach, while promising, it comes with its own set of hurdles and challenges.
It does. Let's dive into that second method you talked about, those electrochemical techniques.
Oh, okay.
This sounds a lot more high-tech.
It does, a bit more futuristic.
Yeah.
It has that appeal.
Yeah.
So instead of directly adding minerals, this approach uses electricity to either capture CO2 directly from seawater or create chemicals that react with it to effectively lock it away.
Hold on, we can just zap CO2 out of the water using electricity.
Yeah, essentially.
That sounds amazing.
It's pretty amazing.
How does that work?
So it involves some clever manipulation of seawater chemistry. One method focuses on enhancing a process called electrolysis, where electricity is used to split water molecules. And by carefully controlling this process, we can create conditions that promote the capture and conversion of dissolved CO2 into more stable forms.
So instead of dumping minerals, we're kind of tweaking the ocean's chemistry.
Exactly.
With electricity to just pull it out of the atmosphere.
Yeah, we're helping the ocean.
That's really cool.
To do what it wants to do anyway.
Yeah, help it along.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Are there any real-world projects testing out these electrochemical techniques?
Yeah, there are. Projects like CDR Meer in Germany are at the forefront of this research. Exploring different electrochemical methods for CO2 removal. And another project, RECAP, just launched recently, focusing on developing scalable and cost-effective electrochemical techniques.
It's really encouraging to see these ideas moving from the lab to real-world testing.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
It seems like there's a lot of potential here, but are there any downsides or risks to consider with this approach?
As with any large-scale intervention, there are always potential risks and unintended consequences. One concern is the energy requirement for these electrochemical processes. To be truly sustainable, we need to power them with renewable energy sources.
Because we don't want to solve one problem and exacerbate another.
Exactly. What about the potential ecological impacts of altering ocean chemistry?
Even in a controlled way, the ocean is vast, but it's also a delicate system.
Exactly. And you're right, the ocean is huge, and even small changes can have big effects, potentially. So that's something we need to be very careful of.
So with all these potential impacts, both positive and negative, how do we even begin to regulate or manage something as complex as ocean alkalinity enhancement?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
And it's one that policymakers and scientists are grappling with right now. Currently, the London Protocol is the main international agreement governing interventions in the ocean. However, it doesn't explicitly address alkalinity enhancement.
So we're essentially navigating uncharted territory.
We are, yeah.
Not just scientifically, but also in terms of governance and regulation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what needs to happen to ensure that if we do decide to move forward with this technology, that it's done responsibly and safely?
Well, first and foremost, we need more research. We need a deeper understanding of the potential ecological and geochemical impacts of alkalinity enhancement, particularly in the deep ocean, which we'll talk about in a bit. That research will help inform the development of robust regulations and monitoring programs. We need to establish clear guidelines on acceptable levels of alkalinity enhancement. Methods for safe and sustainable mineral sourcing and distribution, if we go that route. And protocols for long-term monitoring of both chemical changes and ecological effects.
So it sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is a huge undertaking.
But also an incredibly important one.
Oh, absolutely. Critically important.
It's like we're on the verge of this whole new era of climate action, one that requires us to be more thoughtful and collaborative than ever before.
We're going to have to really work together on this one.
Yeah, really put our heads together.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to those exploratory practitioners you mentioned.
Sure.
Are there actually any groups out there making headway in this field?
Yeah, there are. There are several groups doing some really fascinating work.
Yeah.
Planetary Hydrogen, for example, is a Canadian company focusing on using renewable energy to power their alkalinity enhancement process.
Okay.
They're aiming for a net negative carbon footprint.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing.
So they're turning a climate solution into a carbon negative process.
Exactly.
That's thinking ahead.
That's thinking ahead, yeah.
Who else is out there?
Another group is Project Vesta.
Oh.
They're a nonprofit investigating the use of olivine. Yes, that same mineral found in some jewelry.
Oh.
To increase ocean alkalinity.
Okay.
They're exploring the idea of using olivine sand for coastal protection.
So they're fighting climate change and helping protect our coastlines.
That's the idea. 2 birds, 1 stone.
I like the sound of that. Are there others exploring those electrochemical sides of things?
There are, yes. Sequestro is a company developing a method for producing highly reactive limestone, making it more effective at capturing CO2.
Okay.
And then there's Sea Change, a company that's developed an electrochemical process to remove CO2 directly from seawater.
Wow.
Their innovation even earns them a significant financial prize recently.
Oh, wow.
Which just shows the growing interest and investment in this field.
That's amazing. It's really cool to hear about these innovators and their dedication to developing these cutting-edge climate solutions.
It's really inspiring.
Yeah, it really is. And as we've discovered, ocean alkalinity enhancement holds immense potential.
It does.
But also requires careful consideration and a commitment to responsible development.
Absolutely. We have to be careful.
It's a topic that is sure to spark debate and drive innovation for years to come.
Yeah, for sure.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this. If we could safely harness the ocean's power to combat climate change, what new possibilities and challenges might emerge? It's a question worth pondering as we navigate this complex future of our planet.
It's a big question.
It is a big question.
And hopefully one we can answer together.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the incredible world of ocean alkalinity enhancement.
Thanks, everyone.
The deep ocean, it's such a vast and mysterious place.
It really is. Still so much we don't know about it.
What are we worried about with something like alkalinity enhancement reaching those depths?
Well, the thing is, the ocean is all connected. Right. What happens at the surface doesn't just stay at the surface. We've got these ocean currents, these massive conveyor belts circulating water over long periods. Right. So any change in surface alkalinity, even if it's localized, eventually gets mixed into the deep ocean.
It's easy to forget about that. You think about doing something in one part of the ocean, and it's impacting somewhere else entirely.
It all gets mixed together eventually.
But isn't some level of alkalinity change in the deep ocean a good thing?
Wow.
Like, we know ocean acidification is a huge problem.
Yeah.
Wouldn't this help counteract that?
So it's not quite so simple.
Okay.
Increased alkalinity in the deep ocean could help buffer against acidification.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Those deep sea ecosystems, they thrive in incredibly stable conditions. They're not used to rapid changes.
Right.
So a sudden shift in alkalinity, even if it's a beneficial shift, could still disrupt those delicate food webs.
Oh, so even if it's a good change, it could still mess things up because it's a change.
Exactly, exactly. It's all about balance, right?
Yeah.
There's always the risk of those unintended consequences.
Like so.
Well, some research suggests that increasing alkalinity, particularly if we're doing it through that mineral dissolution, could lead to higher concentrations of certain trace elements in the deep ocean.
Okay, what do you mean by trace elements?
So we're talking things like nickel or chromium.
Okay.
Now, these elements are already naturally present, but if the levels get too high, it could be harmful to certain deep sea life.
It's like that with anything, right?
Yeah.
You can have too much of a good thing.
Exactly. Even water, right? Too much water is a bad thing.
Right, exactly.
So it's a good reminder that even when we're trying to do good, we have to be so mindful of those potential domino effects on complex ecosystems.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
So how do we even begin to regulate or manage something as complex as this, as ocean alkalinity enhancement?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question.
It really is.
And it's one that policymakers, scientists, we're all kind of grappling with right now.
Okay.
You know, the London Protocol is the main international agreement that governs interventions in the ocean.
Okay.
But it doesn't specifically talk about alkalinity enhancement.
So we're navigating uncharted waters here.
We really are, both scientifically and in terms of how we manage it, how we govern it.
So what needs to happen to make sure that if we do this, we're doing it right?
I think the biggest thing is more research.
Right, of course, yeah.
We need a much deeper understanding of what those potential impacts could be.
Okay.
Both ecologically, geochemically, especially in that deep ocean.
Okay.
And that research is what's going to allow us to build those good regulations, those monitoring programs to make sure we're doing it right.
So it sounds like we're talking about a massive undertaking.
It's huge. It's a massive undertaking.
But it's also incredibly important.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the future of our planet we're talking about.
It feels like this is the next era of climate action that we're moving into.
It really does feel that way.
And it requires us to be more thoughtful than ever, to really work together to come up with these solutions.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got to put our heads together on this one.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the incredible world of ocean alkalinity enhancement.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's a topic that I think we'll be revisiting again soon.
I'm sure we will.
But until then, to all our listeners, keep exploring, keep asking those tough questions.
And remember, the future is what we make it.
Absolutely. Have a good one, everyone.